Young or old, we need to consider the topic of thinking ability and how to develop it effectively. All of us can think. We can think about a lot of things, some good and some bad. It's not uncommon, even for an adult, to let his mind wander aimlessly. Or a person may spend time thinking of frivolous matters of little substance. That's what can happen to our thinking. But it doesn't always have a positive effect on our life or our future.
This is how this month's JW Broadcasting opens, by telling you that your thoughts can be wrong. This is a classic sign of a cult. After all, if your own thoughts cannot be trusted, then you can never think your way out of the cult. Jehovah's Witnesses are so used to hearing that they cannot trust their own minds that the leadership literally opens with that sometimes, just like now. Why pretend they aren't a cult trying to dominate your thoughts when they can simply go straight to the point? Seriously, how can people outside this cult not realize this is a cult?
If we incline our thinking to aspects of Jehovah's will and purposes, we'll safeguard our own thinking ability, directing it into the right channels.
This is why I keep saying that this isn't really a Christian religion. I don't care whether they deny the divinity of Jesus or whether they believe he is God or not. I don't care to define Christian religions as that. I say that they aren't really Christians in the deepest, most literal sense of the word, because Jehovah's Witnesses don't follow Jesus. They worship Jehovah. And Jehovah is just a foil for the governing body. This talk is very outright telling you that you should align with whatever Jehovah's purposes are. And Jehovah's purposes just change all the time. Sometimes he needs you to build kingdom halls. Other times he needs you to give a special speech somewhere, or maybe die rejecting a blood transfusion, because Jehovah isn't God. He is whatever the governing body interpret God to be, and you must only shut up and obey whatever they say. After all, if the governing body wasn't picked directly by Jehovah, how could they come up with this amazing insight?
Some popular social media sites contain short videos designed to deliver instant gratification. If the viewer gets no immediate emotional reward, he is tempted to keep scrolling to find material that will give the desired effect. Now, over time, this can lower one's attention span, which may impede a person's ability to learn, retain, and recall information. None of us would want that to happen to us, would we? Additionally, studies have shown that those who spend too much of their time with their electronic devices are more prone to stress, anxiety, depression, or other mental health problems.
Jehovah's Witnesses always misquote very rudimentary pop science to tell you the obvious. It's not good to spend all of your time on your phone. They do this to add some cosmetic validity to their indoctrination efforts. After all, if science agrees that phone bad, then it must agree that it's much better to replace your phone with a cult that you can watch from your phone.
What we have meditated on from God's Word and stored in our mind can mold our conscience, which is an inner mechanism to warn us of wrong actions or tendencies. In effect, our thinking watches over us.
When Jehovah's Witnesses talk about conscience, they are really talking about the pressure to conform to Jehovah's Witness standards. It's not about what you believe to be right or wrong. It's about what you're taught to believe is right and wrong. That's why, as a Jehovah's Witness, you need to spend time self-indoctrinating and gaslighting yourself into thinking that this is a good religion and that you need to obey it. So it can mold your conscience and make you feel bad whenever you don't feel like conforming to whatever the governing body has decided to be acceptable.
We need to pray to Jehovah for insight when we study, apply ourselves to Bible reading on a regular basis, and immerse ourselves in the truth. We should talk to Jehovah in prayer as our closest confidant. This means using our thinking ability to convince ourselves that Jehovah's advice is the best advice, because doing so will safeguard us when we're tempted, tested, or put into a situation where we know we must say no. Remember who we are, what we stand for, and to whom we have dedicated our life.
See, this talk just comes out and says the quiet part out loud. This is like a husband who's lying and secretly cheating, telling his wife that the solution to her suspicions and accusations is to spend time reminding herself that she is happy in this relationship. If religions are like relationships, being a Jehovah's Witness is like being with the most overt gaslighter and manipulator of all time, who's not even good at it anymore, but somehow still keeps finding people who fall for their BS. But the cult talk just keeps going.
Thinking ability will help us to filter the information we let into our mind. The real test of whether our thinking ability has been properly trained is how we apply knowledge. So we need to be cautious in life. Ask questions, fact check, get advice, read, study, and learn from Bible principles.
When Jehovah's Witnesses tell you to fact check, they don't mean to check the facts. They mean to check the apologetics that this religion has come up with. Those are the only facts you should be checking. The little B-roll they show depicts a young Jehovah's Witness who is asked to sign a birthday card for his schoolmate who is sick at home. The lesson this kid learns is when he fact checks with his dad is not to sign that card, and instead visit the kid to try and indoctrinate him before he dies. You can only ask questions, read, get advice, and fact check within this cult. Never outside of it. After all, if they control where you get your information, they can more easily control your thoughts. And that's what this whole talk is about.
Another way to use thinking ability in this old world is to avoid debt. Now, why is this our last point? Because material things are not the most important things in life. Many work themselves to death to gain material prosperity. However, as Christians, there's other work that's related to worship. We want to work ourselves to life. Yes, focused on everlasting life yet ahead.
I love how the tip is just, hey, if you're smart, avoid debt. Not telling you how or anything, just avoid it. This is easy being said when living off Jehovah's Witnesses around the world in a cult compound, but obviously between the prohibition on higher education, the tight and unforgiving schedule of meetings, and the glorification of self-martyrization, accumulating debt is almost inevitable as a Jehovah's Witness and can take a long time to recover when you get out of the cult. Link to Patreon and PayPal in the description. That's why the leadership never spends time telling members how to avoid debt. They just tell them to avoid it if they can. So when some of them inevitably can't, they blame themselves instead of blaming the cult. This was an extremely outright culty talk that proves this religion is nothing but a cult, very openly gaslighting and manipulating followers and controlling their thoughts. And this is why I believe cults like these and speech like this should be regulated, because it undermines what this speech is supposed to be about: your thinking abilities. If you can control where the person gets their information, how they process it, and what outcomes they deem as acceptable, then you can manipulate them to do pretty much anything you want, while knowing your victim will never be able to figure out that you're manipulating them because they're isolated in their own self-made echo chamber. Cults are the last frontier in freedom of expression, but I believe that there is no freedom of expression without freedom of thought. These cults abuse their freedom of expression to remove freedom of thought and expression from millions of people around the world. And they do it all while being funded by your taxes. Yet, if I say that this cult doesn't deserve to be a religion, I am the one who ends up demonetized and demonized for spreading hate speech. But that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching, and if you want to watch the rest of this JW broadcast analysis, you can become a supporter like these guys right here who can already watch the full analysis, or you can hit the subscribe button and the bell button to get notified as soon as the next part is released here on YouTube.